Hello there, and welcome back to the Sports and Dummies Podcast, the podcast for you, whether you know absolutely everything about the world of sports or absolutely zilch. We've got you covered right here on Sports and Dummies, where we wrap up the three biggest stories of the week. But alongside that, we also do exclusive interviews. And today, we're actually talking about a sport that we don't often cover on Sports and Dummies. We're talking about horse racing. And I've been chatting to an ex-jockey, now turned a trainer, one of the most inspirational men involved in the world of sports, an amazing story, such a great guy. We're talking to Brian Toomey, and here's the interview. Brian, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much for coming on. So, Brian, we're going to take it way back. We're going to rewind a little bit in your career, back to your childhood. Can you kind of go over for us sort of your background, where you're from, and your involvement in horse racing?
Yeah, I was brought up on a farm in Ireland. I was brought up on a dairy farm. My family were non-equine people. They weren't into horses, or none of my family had ridden horses before me. But I don't know. I was taken to riding lesson as a kid and put on a pony, and from that day on, I was hooked. It's all I wanted to do, and I kept progressing on to like learning how to ride and going to riding lessons, and neighbours of ours had horses and stuff, so I was always back there learning, and yeah, I just kept progressing really. I was spoiled as a kid.
Fantastic. And were you into any other sports growing up? So it wasn't just horse racing. Did you ever do any other things at school, or was it mainly for you just horse racing?
Well, in Ireland we play a game called hurling. I don't know how to describe it. It's like hockey in the air, I guess. Yeah, I played a lot of hurling as a kid, and yeah, I liked it. But as all my friends were getting bigger and stronger, and I wasn't getting as big.
Okay. And how, in terms of your sort of career then in racing, how does it work? So this is Sports and Dummies. This is a podcast where we kind of break down sports and kind of explain things. And one sport that we haven't ever really fully jumped into is horse racing. And so I'd love to hear more from you. How does it work in terms of growing up? Do you join, say, like an agency? Do you get scouted out by talent scouts? And what's the process growing up and becoming a professional jockey?
Well, obviously you have to be well able to ride, to get into racing, to get into riding thoroughbreds, to riding racehorses, and then it's just like you serve an apprenticeship. Like, it's just like any job really. You go as an apprentice. You start off young and you work your way up. And if you've got the talent that allows you to keep progressing, then hopefully you'll get the opportunities to become a jockey, and then to get opportunities to get support off different trainers and owners.
Right. Okay. No, it's good to clarify. And so, kind of in your career time, you won 80 races out of 800 mounts, which is very impressive. What was your sort of highlight in terms of your career growing up then, say before the age of like 21? What was your best moment in terms of horse racing? And when were you absolutely dead set this was something that you wanted to go and do?
I was happy to be riding for good trainers, good owners, getting the opportunities, and making the most of the ones I had got, or hoping to make the most of the ones I'd got. I've won on some nice horses along the way. No big standout races like Cheltenham festivals or anything like that. But I was content with the career I was having. I was getting plenty of opportunities. I was making a living. I was getting paid to do my hobby, which was a big bonus. But yeah, listen, as a jump jockey, there's ups and downs. Obviously, we get a lot of falls and break a lot of bones, and you might have a lot of sleepless nights in pain, but you're looking forward. You're never looking backwards.
We'll talk about a massive incident, of course, in your career in a minute. But I was going to ask, Brian, one thing that I love about horse racing is the names of horses. I think that's one of the highlights always. What's your favorite name of a horse that you've ridden, or equally one that's memorable?
I was never into like loving horses for their names, but now that you asked that question, yeah, you've got me on that one. I don't know. I guess I don't know. When owners name a horse, usually the name means something to them, or it's like a memory they have, or it's like it's I guess it's if there was a horse named after a memory of your past or a memory of our family member or something like that, I guess it can mean a lot to you. But yeah, I'll leave the name to the owners. I'll just do the training.
Okay, I like that answer. That's good. And can you sort of explain for us, Brian, what defines a good horse? Because I think most people kind of just sort of understand this general term that they need to be big and strong and powerful and quick. And that's a very bland overview and sort of a blanket statement. As a professional jockey, what would you define as a good horse?
I mean, every horse has its grade. You know, if a horse, every horse is not blessed with all the ability in the world, but as long as a horse tries for you, as long as a horse is versatile, you can, like, you're going to the races with not 10 excuses in your mind already why it wouldn't work out. You want to think of the reasons why it will work, or think of the reasons why a horse will win, not reasons why it won't win. You know what I mean? If a horse is versatile, but listen, just like anything, like a human, if a horse is genuine and if a horse is trying for you, you're in with, you're in with a shout. You know, if a horse is genuine.
Yeah. And how much time then sort of alongside, again, this is sort of an interesting question and one that I was thinking about quite a lot, because often you see, say, after a race, the jockeys will pat the horses and kind of talk to the horses. How much time do you spend sort of on a social level with a horse? That might sound really silly, but rather than just racing, do you spend any time getting to know the horse on sort of a different level rather than just from a racing perspective? A bit like owning a pet.
Yeah, no, it is very important. I mean, you want the horse, you want the animal to trust you. Realistically, dating back, horses are a herd animal. You know what I mean? They're not. You need to get them used to humans being around them and get them used to their daily routine. And you want a horse. You want a horse to know that you want the best for him. Like you're not there to. You're not there to hurt him, you know what I mean? You're there you want them to trust you, and the more they trust you, the more they relax, and the more you feel like that they're going to give their all for you. So yeah, it is important for an animal to trust you.
Right, that's really interesting, because I think that's something definitely that I sort of have noticed when watching, say, the Grand National or Cheltenham or wherever, that you often see jockeys have a real connection with their horse, which obviously is really important. So, but yeah, kind of skipping forward a bit in your career, Brian, something that's obviously sort of the focal point of your career and the changing point of your life, it was your accident on July 4th, 2013, at the Perth race course in Scotland. Can you kind of walk us through what happened on that day and the events that transpired?
Yeah, I was going to Perth that day. As my career was starting to pick up, I was getting plenty of opportunities. I think I had one. I think I went up there for 2 or 3 rides that day. And obviously in July, the ground is going to usually be quite firm. Like obviously with the weather, but yeah, I was going there with good opportunities. I think that horse was actually favourite, the horse that I got the fall on, the one I got hurt off. So yeah, I was going up to Perth thinking that it might be a good day. Unfortunately, it didn't really end that way. But yeah, listen, it's as a jockey, you know the falls are going to happen. You know what I mean? So like I don't feel hard done by. It was just one of those things. I was just very unlucky. And the toughest thing about it was my family were called from Perth at home in Ireland, like receiving very bad news. Basically, they were told to get over yesterday, like that it was very serious, and I lost consciousness on course. So I guess it was a case of I was fighting for my life, really. And then when I was rushed to hospital, it obviously they got over at some point, but then I was put in an induced coma for 13 days, I think it was.
I think it's so moving that you're actually still here today. I think it's incredible, and your story is amazing. And like you're saying, you were racing on Solway Dandy, who was the favourite in the conditional jockeys handicap hurdle. For those that are sort of the sport, we've got some analysts that like listening to this, so I'll give them the details. But yeah, exactly as you said, Brian, that you were given a 3% survival rate, and the medics at the scene pronounced you dead for a few seconds. And I'm just so glad that you're here. So. Yes. So in terms of your recovery, what was that process like, being in hospital, knowing about the accident, and then going through all that stuff?
It was a very slow recovery. I mean, I've been been trying to look into it as much as I can. I was put in an induced coma, so basically, like they switch everything off, the kind of thing. They switch the lights off just to let give things time to heal, or time. I don't know. I my memory was very, very bad for the first year. The first year after the injury, my memory was very, very bad. And obviously, there's no facts on brain recovery, but neurosurgeons and stuff and doctors told me that it would take maybe 18 months to heal. I would even say the brain can take even longer. And it's it was a very lonely time, because you feel like no one really understands. You don't feel like anyone understands how difficult it is for you, and part of you doesn't want to let on, because a brain injury is a very scary thing. Because when someone's brain, when you say someone has had a brain injury, you think, oh, they're not gonna be able to think straight, they're not going to be able to make good decisions, they're not going to be able to do this, they're not going to be able to do that. And yeah, I've been one of them. I've been overthinking it from the word go, and I was always trying to let on that it hadn't affected me, but it really had. Like it knocked me for six, basically. Like it was a lot of recuperation, like to overcome all that. And yeah, it was quite a dark place.
You've gone through this process that I think barely anybody in truth has to go through, and sort of that recovery of learning to talk and walk. I read in interviews, you had to learn to make how to make a cup of tea again. That's something that I think most people would just sort of know in an instant, and actually that's something that you had to retrain your brain to do. It's a really interesting thing in terms of how brain injuries work and the impact that goes on from that. So sort of looking on a really positive note, of course, 2 years later, then you actually make a return to the track in 2015. How did that feel, taking your steps out for the first time? What was that like for you? And was it a sense of elation, complete joy in the fact that you've just overcome this enormous hurdle? How did it feel?
It was a sense of relief, really, because I never thought I'd get back. Because in order to get back, you have to pass so many tests, etc., and you have to be at no greater risk than the next jockey. So for I to be at no greater risk than the likes of AP and McCoy, and but part of my head was, I had a titanium plate in my head. My last fall, I lost consciousness. I hadn't ridden for 2 years previous, and obviously my fall was very well documented, and there was plenty of interviews before I got back in the saddle. So people knew how bad it was. So it was quite risky for the British Horse Racing Authority to pass me fit to ride again. But I'm glad I did, because I've achieved that goal. But I put everything into getting back. I did all I could, but I didn't have anyone to kind of compare myself to. Like, so it's if there's anything to take from this, at least people or family members or people close, anyone that goes through a head or brain injury, they can see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or there could be light at the end of the tunnel. Like, it might give them a bit more hope. So it's good, because I didn't really have anyone to compare myself to. And yeah, people don't tend to be as lucky as me, but if anything, it could hopefully give people a little bit of hope that it's not the end.
Yeah, that's really, really profound and really moving. And I think that's exactly right. And so sort of on that note then as well, are you a big advocate then in terms of, have you, since your accident and then all the recovery time, and now obviously going into training, which we can talk about in just a second, since sort of everything that's sort of come out, have you done more research into, or not necessarily personally, but have you worked with neurosurgeons or people involved in the brain world? Again, I'm not that sciencey, so I won't put words in my mouth that I don't know. But yeah, have you been in touch or working with people to develop that understanding about the brain?
I have, but a lot of people have been in touch with me since the injury, and obviously, like, maybe family members of theirs have gone through maybe head or brain injuries. But like, there's so much nerves in your brain. There's so much going on there that different parts of it heal differently, etc. So it's not it's not. It's a very open. It's a very open kind of. It's not like breaking a bone. Bones tend to heal quite similarly or take as much time to heal, whereas the brain is completely different. So I have done a bit of research in the early days, but I don't want to be a neurologist. I want to be a trainer, so I kind of try and leave that behind me as much as I can. But yeah, it's quite scary when you look into it. What goes on up there?
No, completely. And I completely get that, which is why, the following year after coming back in 2016, you retired. And then since hanging up your boots, you moved into training. So on that note, I read an interview actually, Brian, where saying that you want to be sort of known now as a man that does training rather than a man that had the accident those years ago. And so how has your training program been, and what's that development been like since 2016 up to now?
Yeah, since 2016, I've completed all my trainer's courses. I was assistant trainer for Dr. Richard Newland, Grand National winning trainer. I've worked with good people. Yeah, my CV is good, so hopefully I can work on that. I'm currently on the lookout for a yard, and hopefully this is my year. Hopefully I can get started and pick up the support to make a go of it. I'm very determined, and I'm very passionate about it. So when I do get the opportunity, or when the opportunity does come up, hopefully I can land on my feet running.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, we wish you absolutely all the best here at Sports for Dummies. And to kind of wrap it all up, one day, Brian, when you look back on your career, how do you want to be remembered as a jockey and then as a trainer too? And then what are your goals and hopes for the future?
I want to be a successful trainer, and hopefully people will look at me and admire my determination and admire my drive. And yeah, and hope, obviously I can't prove to anyone, I can't prove to anyone anymore how much it means to me and how passionate I am about it. So it was the sport that nearly killed me, and it's the sport that kept me going.
Wow. Taking the words out of my mouth. Well, Brian, thank you so much, mate. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing where your career takes you.
No problem. Thanks very much.
How inspirational was that conversation between Lewis and Brian? What a fascinating man, a fantastic story. If you like the episode, or you just love everything about sports, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast and listen for next week's episode. Goodbye.